I'm sorry, who'd you say you were?
I am your host, Rich Girard. Thanks for tuning in.
That's right.
Here's Richard.
Good morning, Manchester, and to those of you in the surrounding towns, welcome to Hour 2 of Girard at Large. I am your unbelievable host, Rich Girard. Thanks for tuning in. It's 7 minutes after the hour here on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio. You can find us on the web at girardatlarge.com, and you can find us on Facebook and Twitter, also at Girard at Large, where, as you know, we encourage you to like us and follow us because we want to be loved. Apparently, the good folks at the Goffstown Police Department aren't necessarily interested in being loved, but we're going to get to that now. As you know, I want to recap what happened this past week at Goffstown High School. And it's something that's been happening apparently for a bit longer than that because people's attention started to turn to Goffstown High when Connor Suarez, the 15-year-old who went missing, ran away, that people were looking for help to find, took off. And as you know, we posted up his mugshot on our website and our Facebook page. And hundreds of you, literally over 600 of you, shared that picture and enlisted yourselves, your family, your friends in trying to find the boy. Well, it turns out that the boy was found, but nobody over at Goffstown Police will tell us when. Coincidentally, there were threats made against the school on Monday. Someone threatened someone unnamed, and the fact that they're unnamed tells you right there they're a juvenile. So it's probably a kid in the school, and that the police won't comment on whether or not it had anything to do with the sudden finding of the 15-year-old kid is one of the questions hanging out there, but I digress. So what we were able to determine and what we reported on yesterday, without, by the way, so much as a press release from the Goffstown Police Department, no public information being disseminated, was that threats were made, undescribed threats were made in undescribed places to undescribed people on Monday. There were some folks that think that this was all kicked off by Facebook or other social media where the threats were made. Nobody, and that was one of the reasons why I called the Goffstown Police Department. I wanted to find out the origins of the rumors. After all, they said they did a thorough investigation and determined that the threat was non-credible. So doesn't it lead one to conclude that maybe we should find out what the source of the threat was? So I called, and among the questions that I had, first of all, calling the Goffstown Police Department over this matter has been a painful affair for several days. I'll thank the officers that actually returned calls, but there are a lot of unreturned messages. That notwithstanding, so here's what we know about what happened. Somehow, somewhere, officials in Goffstown High became aware of a threat. The superintendent's office was aware of the threat. The school board was notified of the threat in a non-public session on Monday night. And on Tuesday morning, an email went out to the staff at Goffstown High School, alerting them to what was considered to be a credible threat and encouraging them to be alert. 500 kids did not show up to school in Goffstown High on Tuesday as a result of the circulating rumors about the threat. An assembly was held at Goffstown High on Wednesday morning to tell the little cherubs, worry not. The investigation has found the threats to be not credible. You're safe and sound. Go about your business. And Wednesday after school, there was an email sent by both Principal Frank McBride, who did not return my calls yesterday, and Superintendent Stacy Buckley, who sent me an email at 9 o'clock at night saying she has nothing more to say beyond what has already been published, was sent home, both containing the same letter, by the way, from Principal McBride about what took place and that the police have conducted an investigation and found it not to be credible. They took increased security measures notwithstanding. just to err on the side of caution. So that led me to have some pretty interesting questions, such as, when was the investigation concluded? Were the parents notified before Wednesday? If not, why not? And trying to get folks to talk has not been exactly an easy episode. And from time to time, it's a juvenile matter. They wouldn't even give me the kid's height and weight for a description to help people try to find them. Okay? I find that bizarre. You want to find them or you don't. So accidentally, in conversations I managed to have, I learned on Wednesday, was it Wednesday? I think it was Wednesday, that the Goffstown Police Department had stopped its search for Connor Swise. Okay. I also heard from folks that he was seen walking in Penardville. It was Wednesday or Thursday morning, forget which now, and had been to the home of friends. So you can't ask him whether or not he's in custody or he's free or anything else like that, because he's a juvenile and that would violate his rights to privacy. All right. So I called the Goffstown Police Department. Actually, they called me yesterday wanting to know where they could send a press release regarding the situation. So I gave them my email, and then I found one in my fax messaging system later in the day. I called the person who sent the email. It was Lieutenant Keith Chevette. Here's what the press release says in its entirety. Ready for this? The press release says, and the reason why they issued the press release was because of the phone calls I made the day before and probably what I said on the air yesterday. It's entitled Goffstown High School Safety Concerns. The Goffstown Police Department was recently made aware of an alleged safety concern rumored to target the Goffstown High School. The rumored allegation involved a specific student wanting to cause harm at the school. Several kids have told me that student was Connor Swise. In response to the allegation, the Goffstown Police Department and school officials stepped up their security measures, and all information pertaining to the rumored allegation was fully investigated. Though the investigation was determined that the alleged safety concern was not credible, through the investigation, it was determined that the alleged safety concern was not credible. The Goffstown Police Department and school officials asked all students and staff to remain vigilant and immediately report any and all safety threats or concerns to the police department, and it gives the phone number. That is the entire press release. David, are you more confident now as a member of the public that the Goffstown Police Department has put this out?
No. But we're used to this kind of stuff when it comes to, youngsters.
They must be drinking water out of the Piscataqua in that town. So I called Lieutenant Chevette, who is a perfectly reasonable fellow, and I started to ask some questions, like, when did the threat come in? How was the threat received? He said, I think it came in on Tuesday. I said, well, wait a minute. You guys had officers on the scene on Tuesday, and the school board was told Monday night. How could the threat have come in on Tuesday? He said, well, to be honest with you, I really am not familiar with it. I'm just starting to read the reports on it now.
I said, it was honest, though.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine. I said, well, can I speak with someone that's familiar with the case, that's familiar with the situation? He said, well, why don't you ask me your questions and see what I can answer? I said, because I'm sure if you're not familiar with the case and you haven't read the reports yet, that there are going to be a number of questions. And so we might as well just get to someone who's familiar with the details so I can have that conversation. And he said, okay, it was fine. And then I got to Captain Brown. His first name escapes me. Captain Brown, who at one point, so I asked him, so do you remember when can you tell me when the threat came in and what the nature of the threat was? Oh, and Lieutenant Chevette did say that the threat as published in the Union Leader, was to threaten, was to shoot up the school. So they wouldn't even say that that's what they were told. They had to reference another media report. Okay, fine. So tell me something that I don't already know. Well, I wanted to know when it was made, when it came in, how it came in. What was the process that the threat went through? So I get to Captain Brown, and he says that the department was notified by a parent. That was his answer. The department was notified by a parent. And he said on Tuesday. I said, but on Tuesday, you guys had officers there. You had increased security. The school board got it Monday. He said, well, then it must have been Monday. It must have been Monday night. And I said, okay, so you first heard about this through a parent. No, I didn't say that. Well, okay, how did the department hear about it? Did it come to the so it went? So I said, so the threat went to the police department. It didn't go through the schools. It wasn't reported to the school. The school didn't report it. Oh no, I didn't say that. I said, well, what do you mean you didn't say that? Well, apparently, after some confusion, he finally spit out. He said, the school was notified, the SRO and the school were made aware of this threat by kids during the school day, and that they had investigated the threat and determined that it was not credible. And it wasn't apparently until a parent called the police department directly later that day or early evening, he was somewhat vague on the timeline, that the Goffstown Police Department decided they probably should take some action to increase security at school the following day. I said, well, did you work with the Goffstown? I mean, this is just rethinking the conversation is starting to get me all. There were several points in the conversation where I said, Captain Brown, why does this have to be hostile? Why are you treating this? Why does this have to be contentious? I said, I'm just asking you simple questions to try to understand what happened. The first thing I said to the guy is, listen, I know it's involving a juvenile. I'm not going to ask you anything in particular about the juveniles alleged to be involved in this. And, oh, thank you very much. And a lot of people don't understand that. I said, well, I do. I said, but I do have general questions about how this thing was handled and what the protocols are and how it all came about. Right. And we'll get to those after we check traffic, weather, and sports. This being brought to you by our good friends at the Dairy Field Restaurant. I just, after telling you the story, might want to go to the Dairy Field and sit on the deck and get rained on while I enjoy an umbrella drink and a song or two from a quality New England area band. Their 200-seat deck.
Going to need 2 umbrella drinks.
I got to tell you, I think that is the best deck in Manchester.
I agree.
And for many other places. So if you're looking for a great place to hang out, have a great drink, listen to some good music, obviously enjoy some fine food, then visit the Dairy Field at 625 Mammoth Road here in the city of Manchester, easily accessible to all of Greater Manchester at that address. You can find them online at thedairyfield.com, where you can check out their menus and their beautiful banquet facilities. That's thedairyfield.com. David, how are the roads?
Thank you, Rich, and good morning, Manchester. A reminder to the residents of the city, the fireworks is scheduled this Sunday. Bridge Street Bridge will be closed.
Girard Large time is 23 minutes after the hour. Continuing now on the story of my conversation with the Goffstown police captain named Brown. And he seemed to be irritated that I was asking him about the rumors and stuff. At one point, I said to him, I said, Captain, I said, I'm bringing this information to your attention so you can tell me it's right or it's wrong. That way, whatever we go out over the air with is accurate. I would think you would appreciate somebody in the media wanting to get it right. Why are you? And he snapped when I asked him. So I understand that you had six additional officers on site that morning at school. He said, well, no, we did not have that. I said, well, how many officers did you have? I don't know how many officers we had. Well, wait a minute. It got to a point in the conversation where he said both the call had been given to him because he was the duty officer on Tuesday and he was familiar with it, but he had only started reading the reports of the incident and wasn't necessarily familiar with all of the details. So I'm getting both of this from him. at one point in time. I said, well, how many officers were there? He didn't know how many officers were there. He said over the course of the day, officers made extra stops by the school. There may have been another one assigned. He said probably 5 or 6 officers over the course of the day may have been there if you included him and the chief, who I guess also paid a visit there. And he said, where did you? I said, from several people who were actually inside the building, one of whom said they counted the number of police officers that were in the, that they saw on their way into the building. So maybe people aren't telling me the truth, but Captain, I'm asking you these questions so I can get the facts of what happened.
Right.
So where the conversation completely went south was when I started to recite the timeline that I knew at the time about when the complaint came in, when it was given to the school board, when it was given, when the teachers were notified, and when I said, and the teachers got an email on Tuesday morning. He said, it sounds to me like you're trying to find a way to impeach the, not impeach, he didn't use that term, but basically discredit what the procedures that the Goffstown school district did. I said, well, actually, what I was trying to ask you is, what are the protocols here? I asked him, did the police department have any input? Did you direct, advise, or otherwise have any input into the measures taken by the school department, the school district, to safeguard the kids and the staff? And he didn't say. We don't have a dictatorial situation. We have a wonderful working relationship with the Goffstown schools. And he went on and on and on about their wonderful working relationship. I said, yes, but what was your input on how to make sure that the kids were safe? Were the parents notified? If so, if not, why not? Well, that's the school district's call. And, back on the one, in a situation like this, Captain, well, I guess what I'm looking for are there standard operating procedures, protocols that the department would want to see followed to ensure the maximum possible safety for students and staff in the building. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Because what I don't understand and what I'm trying to find out is, why were teachers notified after an email, many of them got it after they showed up at school that day, and why weren't the parents told anything? How does that help public safety? And he then said that no other reporter, whether it was from the Goffstown News or the Union Leader or WMUR, had ever asked him questions like that. And that if what I was looking for was a way to get a better headline so people would get more newspapers, and then he realized it was on radio, where he said, or to fill your airwaves with inflammatory stuff that are going to cause more people to tune in. He said, I'm not interested in having that conversation. I said, well, I'm not really interested in that conversation either. And I can't speak for what other reporters may or may not have asked. Maybe they don't know what I know. Maybe they're lazy. Maybe they're incurious. I don't know. But what's wrong with asking a question about what advice, what standard operating procedure the department might have in a situation like this, so that the public can understand in a news report, which I would like to do, about how these situations work so they can have greater confidence in the people taking care of their kids. It ended up with him hanging up on me.
That's not a good way to finish a phone call, huh?
So here's what we don't know. We don't know what role the Goffstown Police Department played here. We don't know. Oh, one of the questions I asked is, when was the investigation finished? The investigation wasn't finished until Tuesday evening. Now, keep in mind, you had parents uninformed of the situation except by the rumor mill that their kids took home from the school, which is why 500 kids didn't show up on Tuesday, because they were fearful. They didn't know what was going on. They had no information to work with from any official in the school or police departments. And they were fearful. They didn't know what was going to happen. They didn't know what steps were going to be taken. And they were fearful. Gee, that's a great environment to have in your community. And so if I had had the opportunity to speak with Superintendent Buckley, who won't talk to me, to speak with Principal McBride, who Superintendent Buckley spoke for in her email to me, saying neither one of us have any more to say. Okay. Then let me plant some questions in the minds of my listeners in Goffstown, and also those of you in Dunbarton and New Boston who send your kids to Goffstown schools. Number one, how are threats supposed to be reported? See, apparently we've got kids who either went to the SRO in the school, who notified the school, or the school went to the principals or the administration who went to the SRO and did some sort of internal school investigation and determined it was not credible. And according to Captain Brown, it was not until a parent called the Goffstown Police Department sometime after that that the department decided that it would put extra security out until Tuesday. Not until Tuesday, but until after that, they put extra security out on Tuesday. On one hand, we have Captain Brown saying that internally they determined it really wasn't credible, and it wasn't until the parent that the police really started their investigation. So the police had not concluded their investigation, could not determine that it was in fact a not credible a threat until Tuesday night, according to Captain Brown. Question. Oh, and the school board was notified of the threat and a threat that was believed at the time, according to all of my other sources, to be credible. Why would they send out an email Tuesday morning to the staff saying that it was credible? Why would they do that if it wasn't? Just to be safe? To be safe, we're going to tell you we have a credible threat, but it's not credible, so don't worry about it. That doesn't make any sense. Why wasn't that sent out Monday night? However late it may have been. Why wasn't it sent out? Why were the parents not notified? See, if I were a parent and my kid, and this situation were happening at my kid's school, here's what I would want to see. Dear Mr. Girard, the Goffstown School District and the Goffstown Police are currently investigating a threat of violence, a threat of violence made by somebody at Goffstown High School. Allegedly, the threat is to be is to be acted on tomorrow. We have not been able to verify the threat. However, here are the measures that we are taking to ensure that school is conducted safely and without operation tomorrow. Number one, there will be added police on the grounds at Goffstown High. Number two, we will be replacing all crossing guards in the area with uniformed police officers. Number three, we will have rotating patrols going through the neighborhood for the balance of the school day. We do not believe it will be possible for any assailant to get by the various checkpoints that we have set up around the school to ensure the safety of your student while there. If you choose to withhold your child from school tomorrow, please know that it will be considered an excused absence. Have a nice day. Principal Frank McBride, Superintendent Stacy Buckley, and Police Chief Sullivan. Seems to me as a parent, I have a perfectly reasonable expectation that I would receive information like that if there was a threat that they weren't sure was or wasn't credible, but we're going to take appropriate action. I would feel comfortable sending my kid into that school because I would be aware of the threat and I would be aware of the police actions decided to take the threat. Oh, how about a PS? We have notified state authorities and officials in neighboring communities of the potential threat in the event that they have other insight or resources that they can offer. That seems to me to be an honest, transparent, reasonable thing to do. But I guess Captain Brown is not going to answer the question as to whether or not that can or should or could be part of a safety protocol. Captain Brown is not going to let us know what the protocols are when a threat comes in. I asked, what is the protocol when a threat comes in? What are the procedures that should be undertaken by the department and or the schools to guarantee the safety of the students? When are parents involved? You know, if there had been some credibility to that threat, regardless of what the police did, and apparently the police did less than what my sources told me. Apparently the police did less according to Captain Brown. I guess they periodically were sending by extra patrols. Gee, I felt a whole lot better knowing there were a half a dozen cops on the ground there to greet the kids as they came to school in a show of force. I have residents of Goffstown, listeners to the show, who said that the crossing guards, the normal crossing guards, were replaced with uniformed police officers. Okay, all of these things make sense. Here I am trying to verify information so that the public can have some confidence in their school and police officials on how they handled this threat. And I got attitude. I got contentiousness. I got hung up on because this clown thought that I was just out for inflammatory stuff to go over the airwaves. Well, guess what? Captain Brown, if that's what you wanted to avoid, you made a serious miscalculation in how you responded to my questions. Oh, by the way, he was a busy man and he didn't have time to talk to me. Oh, really? Well, busy man, you better find a way to talk to the media that disseminates the information that your public relies on to know how you act in a crisis or in a situation like this, so they know how they can best act in a crisis and not create additional stress for you that you might have to deal with in the event that something happens. And so here are the unanswered questions. Why weren't parents notified until a day after the threat was determined to be non-credible? Why weren't they notified beforehand? What if this threat had not been idle? What if I happened to be one of the parents whose kids was out of the social media loop and sent him to school and the place got shot up as threatened? Who would be responsible for that? Who would be responsible for that? I think, frankly, that the Goffstown School District and the Goffstown Police Department deserve zero credit for how this thing was handled, because it seems to me that they were more concerned with notifying their teachers after they were in the building just to make sure they showed up for work that day. And they seem not concerned at all about notifying the parents about what at the time was believed to be a credible threat they were sending their children to school to potentially face. And we're supposed to clap and applaud for the wonderful way in which they handled it? Here's what they did. They told their school board the night before. They had some extra security the day of. They did nothing to address any of the rumors in the school until the official investigation had concluded there was no legitimacy to the threat. They didn't notify parents until after school, the day after the place was allegedly going to be shot up. And I'm the guy who gets hung up on? Thank you, Captain Brown, for making my understanding of this situation for all who are listening to it now as painfully clear as it can possibly be. Can you believe that? You know what the thing that was most alarming to me in that whole conversation with Captain Brown of the Goffstown Police Department was? That he thought I was somehow trying to be, what's the term I'm looking for? That he thought I was looking to gin up the works because I was asking questions that no other reporter not only didn't ask him about this situation, but the kind of questions that he's never been asked.
Is sensationalize the correct adjective? Thank you.
Correct, Dave. So I was trying to be sensationalist. I was trying to do nothing of the sort. If anything, and anybody who follows this show knows quite to the opposite. How sensationalist were we, for example, when Officer Doherty got shot? Not at all. But you know what? Because I guess I know how to ask a question or two, and because I know where to go to ask them, apparently not too good in Goffstown. We were able to disseminate information that was helpful and otherwise unavailable. I don't give a rat's you know what. I don't care who asked him what. I really don't. What does what somebody else asked you have to do with what I'm asking you? I asked him that. What does what somebody else asked you have to do with what I am asking you? You mean I'm only limited as a member of the media to questions that have been asked by other members of the media? Are you serious? And the idea that I had somehow no right or malintention in asking the questions, that I was looking to be salacious or sensationalist or somehow blow this thing up simply for ratings. Listen, let me tell you something. You know why this show is listened to? It's not because I'm all sizzle and no steak. This show is listened to because we work very, very hard to find the information that needs to be found and to disseminate it to the public in a responsible, verified manner. I have multiple sources for every piece of information I have shared with our audience about what did and did not happen at Goffstown High School. And when I was uncertain of what had been shared because it was rumor and it was difficult to nail down, I said so. And there was a lot, frankly, that I've been told that I haven't shared because I can't verify it at all. If I wanted to be sensational, I would be talking about all of it. And the nerve of this guy to somehow think that I was being inappropriate in my questions simply because he'd not been asked that before is ridiculous. You know what that tells me? That tells me that the questions I were asking probably had answers that didn't look good, didn't sound right, maybe showed that the situation by the police department or the schools or both probably wasn't handled in the best possible way, and better to hang up on the guy and make him look, try to make him look like the jerk than to answer the questions about the process and the protocols and what should people expect when something like this happens. So, am I all worked up about it? Yeah, because in today's world, where everybody's worried about the next Sandy Hook, which was not the next, but the next Columbine, the next West Virginia, the next. In a world where everybody's worried about that and hypersensitive, I think people are best served by accurate, transparent information being disseminated in a timely, responsible fashion and allowing the people who are potentially at risk to make proper decisions for themselves. And that's the way it is.
I'm sorry, who'd you say you were?
I am your host, Rich Girard. Thanks for tuning in.